the music unfolds like we think it will, it feels stable. And if it surprises us or we can't figure out how to follow along with the events, we consider it unstable. An example of a giant instability in music is Cage's 4 minutes and 33 seconds. Everybody had a certain set of expectations. He made a monumental shift in those expectations, but that can happen on a lesser degree as well when we expect a resolution and it doesn't occur. So in collaboration with my writing partner, Janice Smith, I've taken the answer to these 3 questions and framed them as compositional capacities. Specifically, there are 3 compositional capacities: feeling full intention, musical expressivity, and artistic craftsmanship. To be most impactful in their work, composers must possess the ability to artistically assemble and shape musical elements in ways that invite body-based perception of music's expressive features so that a feeling full engagement is possible. Let's look beyond these capacities as a concept and see how young composers make these connections. So this is the student composition from the beginning of our session. As you listen this time, try to identify one aspect of craftsmanship, 1 or 2 of the musts that seem most impactful in terms of expressivity, and a feeling or 2 that you experience as a result. There is no right answer. Simply try to make a connection between these 3 capacities. Whatever you hear, experience, or think is right. Now take a moment and compare the 3 things you just listed to the list you made at the beginning of this session. Did the frames of feeling full intention, musical expressivity, and artistic craftsmanship change how you thought about this work? Mari, perhaps you can help me here because I can't see everybody and my screen. But is there anybody who would be willing to share something they noticed during this listening that maybe didn't capture their attention the first time they listened?
Would anyone like to respond? You can unmute themselves if they'd like to, or put it in the chat box. I know for myself personally, the first time I was focusing on the elements, you know, staccato and, you know, syncopation, texture, you know, and then the second time I was totally rezoned into, you know, what, you know, the secondary elements that you listed, you know, the things that matter in a way, you know, to the listener. Anyone else like to, that's only just my perspective. Kun here has a message. Thank you for measure music ability is not easy. However, you can break down the indicators for measure music ability. What kind of feeling that you mention in your research? So that's more of a general comment, but does anyone, and I'll come back to that, Kun, for sure. Has anyone any other experience to share or would like to put themselves out there? Pam is...
Mary, mind if I share? This is Marcy.
Marcy, how are you?
Good, and yourself?
Take it away.
Okay, I was thinking the same things that you were, Mary. I might have considered feeling full intention the first time with the first hearing, but wasn't so much noticing the expressivity or the craftsmanship. So that was something that I reflected on when I was with the second listening.
Thank you for sharing that. One of the things that students do is they need multiple engagements, as we all do, to kind of capture some of these. But it's very easy for students to default to focusing on artistic craftsmanship, because so much of our teaching in the States is element oriented, and sometimes we don't get to the feeling things quite as quickly, and we rarely talk about how the two connect. So let me share with you what a trio of 13-year-old string players wrote about their composition. So students offered 6 comments highlighting the connections between capacities in this work. And I'll play the piece one more time. I have my computer churned up as loud as it will go, so I apologize if the sound quality is not good. That's still a little bit of a challenge in the Zoom world. But perhaps you can read some of their comments as the piece plays, and I've kind of highlighted what they were pointing to as they explained. So what we've just seen is the first corner of a triangulated assessment. The statements that the composers made about their pieces allow us to see the connections they are making between feeling, expressivity, and craftsmanship. For example, the blue text here would be replaced as follows. We used an ostinato to invite the perception of constant forward motion, which is meant to evoke the feeling of solid confidence. Now, students could fill this this prompt out in lots of different ways, but what lets us gain further insight is the second section, where they explain the reason why they think their composition is effective. Now, you may have made a different set of connections as you listened, and that's fine. There's not just one set of connections or even a right set of connections. The point is to get students to make the connections between craftsmanship, perception, and feeling so that they can come to understand how music informs our experiences in the world and how they can choose to assemble sounds to invite different types of responses. While the composer's viewpoint is important, it's just the first step. We know that we need a composer, one or more performers, and an audience to complete real-world triangulated assessment. So the composers and performers of this work have offered their thoughts. You can take a moment and formulate your thoughts as a listener using this template. And the final template is the prompt for composers. Notice that all 3 assessment prompts include a place for students to offer a rating and a rationale. This is yet another window into students thinking about the composition. Let me talk for just a moment about how important that is. When composers write these explanations, they often lament that they had a compositional idea that they could not fulfill. Their inability to do so is often tied to them not knowing how to notate an idea, not being able to get the software to do what they want, or perhaps not being able to play something if they are the performer of their own work. These hurdles are not about compositional thinking, but about tool use. And if we want to know what students are thinking, that thinking is absolutely not evident in their compositional product. That product may only represent a portion of what they are imagining, what are they dreaming, what are they trying to do. What these forms often give us, and particularly these explanations, is a way to identify what students need to know how to do next in order to fill their compositional objectives. Another thing to note about these templates is that they offer a sentence structure which is helpful for students as they begin to work with an open construct rubric. But as students become more experienced as assessors and more nuanced in their use of descriptive language, they may need to set this wording aside and focus on the 3 capacities to best capture their thinking. When these prompts are given to students, the number of statements they are asked to make is adjusted to reflect their age and experience. I've had students as young as age 5 be able to describe connections between the sounds they made and the feeling they wanted to add to a story. I've also had college students struggle to make connections, mostly because they fear getting it wrong and because they are element oriented. As students gain experience with these concepts, they become more comfortable and kind of let go of that fear factor. The statements shown here are all what I call one-to-one-to-one. Students identify how one feelingful intention relates to one musical expressivity pair and to one technique of artistic craftsmanship. As composers developed an increased level of proficiency, listeners as well, they might make additional connections. On the left, we see that one feelingful intention might be brought about by 2 aspects of expressivity, and each is tied to its own specific technique of craftsmanship. On the right, we see how one feeling can be tied to 2 aspects of expressivity, but one of those aspects is crafted using 3 different musical elements: rhythm, melodic contour, and dynamics. Further, as a single piece of music unfolds, many different feelings might be experienced. Therefore, students might reference one section of a larger work or may have a descriptive statement for a more emotionally complex work that involves numerous statements. If you took time to graph any larger piece, there would be just zillions of graphs. We're just trying to get snapshots of the things that students think are most important about their work. The comments that arise from the use of open construct rubrics are powerful tools for providing triangulated feedback. When I meet with a young composer about their work, I can talk with them about their own assessment, show them the assessment from their peers, both performer and audience, and perhaps show them my assessment as well when appropriate. I ask students how their work was perceived by others in comparison to what their original intentions were. These 2 things do not have to align for a work to be successful, but it is useful for the composer to know how their intentions carry through their craftsmanship and extend to performers and an audience. If the audience didn't get their work, is there a reason why they didn't? If the audience had a different reaction than the one the composer expected, what was that reaction and what brought it about? The comments and questions that these forms invite can boost the power of the composer's reflection. This is particularly useful during the process of creating a work, when students might share in what I call a composer circle. So they're kind of sharing work to date and they're getting feedback during the process of composing. The feedback that they get at that time can really allow them to engage in meaningful revision. And so these forms are not just end of the road forms, but also very useful in process. To close, open construct rubrics work best with a student-centered emergent composition curriculum. They are flexible enough to be used with any style or genre of music, and they can be adapted for situations where roles of the performer and composer or the performer and audience are blurred or blended in some way. The open construct rubric can be used alongside a checklist of words descriptive of feelings or techniques that composers use to invite particularly body-based perceptions in invoking response. These checklists can help teachers design composition projects that allow students to explore and discover new facets of music as they work. One of the things that I found really valuable about these reporting forms for students is it allows me to see where they are and what they need next. They often reveal the thing they wanted to do and couldn't quite get or tried to do and they're not quite happy with. That shows up in these forms and it allows me to guide or provide the information they need to take their next step. In the end, my primary objective is to allow students to explore, find, and develop their own artistic voices as composers. I want to empower young composers by increasing their understanding of how music works and by providing them with tools that can inform their growth. I believe that a capacities-based approach, coupled with triangulated open construct rubrics, provides students with tools that allow for musical self-empowerment. With that, I thank you for your kind attention during this presentation, and I welcome any questions or thoughts that you have.
Thank you, Michele, and I'm also very conscious and I'm acknowledging Angie's work, and I was thinking while you were speaking, what came through in her data in terms of the role of self-assessment and how refreshing it was for her students to feel part of defining what their goals, learning goals were, and being part of that process. So with that in mind, I was wondering, how might teachers be encouraged to invest in assessments that focus on compositional, the processes rather than the product?
I think one of the tricks that I find in the States, at least, about getting teachers comfortable with composition is that many have not experienced what I call true composition. And what I mean by that is that in college theory courses, there are so many tight guidelines and you're recreating something a composer has already done. Whereas in a more open composition, students might explore things that they haven't encountered or may serendipitously kind of stumble across an idea and then develop that. So I think what we really need to do is we need to get more teachers engaged in professional development that gets them actually messing with composition, just get in there and play, and exploring what they can do to kind of begin to identify some aspect of themselves as composers, not just as performers.
Thank you, Michele. And I'll go back to Kun's question here. How can you really make conclusions with this very detailed rubric? It's a general question. So how?
I think the conclusions that I try to draw are, what aspects of artistic craftsmanship, what elements, what compositional tools are students using? What are the feelings that they're trying to invite? And how are they connecting those things? They may write a beautiful melody, but they may tell me a feeling that doesn't quite match that melody, or they may not be able to explain why they think their melody invites a particular feeling. I find that when we use the musts, they start to make those connections. And so I often keep sort of checklists for individual students that are the techniques that they have encountered, the feelings that they have tried, the genres they have explored, the ensembles they've written for. I have them all create little sort of portfolios where we track that, because I'm really interested in how they make those connections and how do they challenge themselves to make more of those connections.
Yes. And Pam has a question. She's wondering what differentiates compositional creativity and performance creativity in your rubric?
Yeah, thank you, Pam. So I focus today on compositional capacities. If anyone is interested in how those capacities play out in performance and in listening and in improvisation specifically, Janice Smith and I authored an article in the Music Educators Journal. It's March 2016, and it's called The Big Idea and Developing Musical Capacities, and we talk about all of those. So the things that I hold as core across whatever role we play in music, performer, composer, listener, improviser, we all deal with feeling, we all deal with bodily based perception, we all deal with craftsmanship, whether it's interpretive, perceptive, or compositional. So those are things that stay the same. And if you want to dig into the deeper stuff, MEJ March 2016 has some answers.
Thank you. Marco has another question. In creating this rubric, did you anchor it on the performance indicator set by your music curriculum?
Oh, absolutely not. And that might seem like a strange answer. I am not a huge fan of the standards that we have in the United States. I think they're very elementally focused. There are certainly some good things there, but the entire point of my work is that we spend too much time only talking about elements And we're not talking about how we perceive those in a way that takes us to feeling, yet almost every single person I've ever asked about why they engage with music, they answer about feeling. And I at a loss for how our profession has gotten so far away from that thing in our teaching.
Yeah. And Tamara also mentions, she asked, or she mentioned that you have college students who struggle with articulating and engaging with this process. So her question is, how do you guide these students to become more comfortable with your process or rubric?
I think that as we engage in listening exercises, listening is a little less intimidating in that they're not putting out original composition ideas. But as we listen, we say, you know, what do you think the composer's intention might have been? What led you to think that? What are you hearing in the music that is allowing you to have a particular feeling? So I don't believe that we can have any composition without listening, and we have to start in sound to make sound. Jody Kirshner is typing a big yay there because Jody Kirshner listening, right? So we have to make sure that students have those models. And when they have a little experience analyzing what another composer has done and then trying to apply that in their work, they become much more open to the idea of exploring those concepts themselves. The biggest thing with college students, in my opinion, is that they have been, they've been sort of paper trained to only talk about elements. And so just kind of coaxing them gently and inviting them to take the next step is kind of the trick.
Yes, and we have the same idea as I mentioned earlier on. In Ireland, there's a huge shift now to composition, classroom project-based classroom assessments, where the teachers are now assessing their students on compositions for the first time in Ireland, and it's very it's tricky for some people, you know. It's just a mindset shift, and but this is all very valuable. And the importance of listening, I can't second that enough as well. And that's what the world music pedagogy that I was alluding to during Marsha's one is all framed on the listening part of the process. Question here, again, Kun, what is the objective to doing this measurement? To measure product of music, of making music better? Or I mean, the objective of this measurement, is it focusing on the quality of music or others? I'm not sure if you understand that or if that's making sense. Yeah.
Sure, I think we get back to the process and product dichotomy. I don't believe that we can assess one without the other. So this gives me incredible insight into the process and explains a lot of what I'm seeing in the product. Whereas if I apply kind of one of those theory-based rubrics from very early in my presentation to just the product, I'm making a bunch of judgments about student work, but I might not understand that student's thinking. We may not share an aesthetic. They might be writing from a musical practice that I'm unfamiliar with. And so when we talk about culturally sustaining pedagogies and culturally relevant and responsive pedagogies, it's rather presumptive of me to pass judgment on a student's work when I might not know what the background of that work is. And I think that these rubrics open the door for a lot of discussions and allow access to process in a way that we haven't traditionally sought it.
And Valerie Peters there shares a lovely experience that her best theory class ever during her master's degree was when she got to compose in all the genres that they were studying, and made the theoretical concepts real, and let me be creative and let her be creative. Lovely, and thanks for that. Marcy also asks, other than Western music notation, have you considered using the ways or other alternative ways to represent the sonic properties? So
Yes. So I said notation here because I find that notation is often a stumbling block to creativity. So I have students do a lot with invented and iconographic and other forms of notation. And when they develop the need for a traditional mode of notation, at that point, I help them transition in, kind of mixing invented notations and traditional notations so that they build comfort without losing creativity.
Yeah. It's interesting when we think of notation, some people like some people might automatically think it's Western Standard notation. But another question here for Jennifer Michele, there we have, composition is so important for self-expression in music, just like creative writing and language. Your structure is fabulous guide. It's a nice comment. Just another, there's loads of messages coming in and it's very hard to get to everyone. Great, sorry, I'm just trying to get to questions and the process are very fundamentally. Any other questions there that I'm missing, or if anyone wants to unmute themselves, if they feel a burning question that I'm missing along the way. Josh there, I can't wait to employ this with my students in the fall, even from a distance format. If we were teaching from home, it'd be very helpful. Any other questions there? Because I know we have 3 minutes. We actually are running well on time. We have still 3 minutes within the session. Francis there, we'll take this for sharing. Thank you for this. I was wondering how these open constructs can be distilled into making fair assessments. For instance, with regards to misalignments between composer intentions and all audience reactions, to what extent can these play into deciding on a fair grade?
Yeah, okay, so I don't think that the composer's intention and the audience's reaction have to align. I think that if we were to play a piece of music right now and we were all to write down 3 feeling words, there may be some overlap if we are very familiar with the genre, or you know, there are particular sounds that we hear tied to certain things, whether it's patriotic music or whether it's, you know, a horror movie. There are some sounds that we have culturally agreed upon, but it's not the measure of a work that everybody has the same feeling when they encounter it. So I use the assessment as a way to inform the students' thinking in the period of feedback and allow them to decide how they might want to revise or not revise, or what tools are working for them and what aren't. But I don't consider a match between composer intention and audience reaction to be essential. I used Rite of Spring earlier. I mean, that would have killed the Rite of Spring on day 1, right? So I think the fairest assessment is to actually listen to what the student is saying about their work and to say, are they able to make and defend the connections they draw between these 3 capacities? And if they can make connections and explain them, that is good progress.
Thank you, Michele. That's great. And, you know, we'll wrap up the session in a minute, but it's interesting, and I thank you so much for affording us the space to experience a shift or a reframing of how we perceive music, because even looking back in the original comments there, with Pam noticed on her first listening, she noticed sound and silence, or the musicality and the intentionality of mood. But the second time, you gave us the frame or the language to name the artistic craftsmanship. And that's really valuable. Also, Elisa's comment, you know, the first time she was connecting to the title or connecting to the embodiment of the music. And the second time it was a different frame of mind. So that is really valuable. And actually, there's another question here while we have 2 more minutes. Have you considered, from Zara, have you considered using a competency-based teaching evaluation?
Yes, and I think one of the things that's great about these open construct rubrics is you can certainly align them with other methods of assessment as well. So with very young composers, like kids who are 6 or 7, my criteria might be that they can make a one-to-one connection. And by the time I'm working with students who are, you know, 10, 11, 12 years old, I might want them to be able to identify 3 feelings and the musts that are connected to them, and to list you know, a broader range of artistic techniques. So you can kind of grade level it, if you will, and say, you know, at minimum we should be here, and a truly outstanding performance would have more of these descriptors or more detail, and people can play with that however they wish. But I think that I'm very cautious about requiring numbers of things. I think we get quantitative very quickly in a world where we are more qualitative.
Yeah, thanks, Michele. And that actually answers Josh's question, and it's the last that I'll be able to take in this session. In public schools, we have to provide the letter numeric grades, and that's exactly what you're speaking to. And how do you translate that feedback to grades, and how do you get around it? You know, and that's, yeah, that's the reality of the teaching. Would you have any idea on that, or how would you address that, or how would you translate that feedback to the grades?
Yeah, I think in translating to grades requires you to really consider what your personal philosophy is, and then to decide, you know, what are the measurements that are going to demonstrate that students are functioning within that context that you've established. So I don't think that there is a particular direct correlation from this rubric to a grade. I think grading is more complex than that. So that's really a whole nother session. It's a great question, but it's also a whole nother exploration.
Well, Michele, that brings us to the coda of our session, and we're going to finish up and to use the expression and to borrow it from Marsha's paper. The coda becomes the beginning, and indeed I believe that this is only the beginning of more discussion, and these chats and these exchanges, I have no doubt, will continue throughout the break, and we're going to have a break now for 20 minutes. And so thank you again, Michele, for sharing your insights, as with all the other presenters. It's been fantastic. So take a break, and we will be back in 20 minutes. Thank you again, Michele.
Thank you.
Chen-Hafteck. Yes, hello everybody. This is Lily Chen-Hafteck, and I'm one of the commissioners of MISTEC. And so now I'm taking over from Marie-Louise, who did a great job to chair the previous sessions. So now next we have another workshop, and this is workshop 3 of Pepe, Luiz, Barcellos. Okay, so this will be a workshop on Samba music and Brazilian music, right, Pepe?
Yeah.
Yes. So would you like to start sharing screen? So I want to let you get started.
Sure. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you, Lily. Thank you, Alex. It's fantastic. I wish we were all in Estonia right now, but okay, here we go. So let me close this one and go to this one here. Okay. So, sorry. Okay, Samba for educators. Feel free to jump in, or if you want to ask a question or something that maybe you didn't understand, because this time will fly. Okay? So, just a little bit of a Brazilian song for you that I love. It's a good way of introducing. Isso aqui, é pouquinho de Brasil, ia, ia. Esse Brasil que canta e é feliz, feliz, feliz. É também pouco de uma raça que não tem medo de fumaça, e não se emprega, não. Foi isso aqui. And here we go. Okay, so what are we going to see today? So I'm going to introduce what I'm talking about. Then the two pillars of this workshop is body movement and cultural diversity. How does that blend and how does it feed from each other? And here I'm approaching Brazilian music and especially Samba, and how you as an educator can use Samba in your classroom. You don't need to be a master. You don't need to be super percussion player. But what we're gonna do is we're gonna respect the music, and we're gonna inform ourselves, and we're gonna move. Okay, so if you have a little space in front of your computer, get ready to stand up. At some point, we're gonna do some movement and clapping. Okay, I have this concept that I'm borrowing from Patricia Campbell about the multi-musical, and Brazil is, in my opinion, a multi-musical country in its own right. So we're gonna see our goals. What are our goals? What are our goals when we are approaching the Samba in the classroom with our students? What are our intentions? What is our aim? And I'm gonna use the Passo method. It comes from, it's an approach from Lucas Ciavata, a piano player, percussionist, singer, composer, educator from Rio de Janeiro. And I'm gonna introduce syncopation. I'm gonna talk about instruments. I'm gonna talk about rote learning. And I'm gonna give an example of a very famous song called Masquinada by Jorge Benjor. And I'm gonna show you how does the Samba Batucada goes. Okay, then we're gonna have a moment for reflection and questions, and then I'll show you the reference, of course. So here we go. Oops. So introduction. The main objective of this session is to encourage participants to explore a new and a rich learning environment through body movement, rote learning, group interaction to develop their students' musicianship, exploring movement, singing, drumming, and the culture of Brazil. Hands-on, that's what was supposed to be, but unfortunately we're not in Estonia, so it's gonna be virtual hands-on, hopefully. And I'm gonna need your participation to incorporate a new set of behaviors, because when you approach the music learning, teaching and learning through movement, you gotta think different. You gotta approach it in a different way. So it's gonna be a sequential movement, because I'm gonna start from very basic, and then I'm gonna spiral through more complex, and I'm gonna talk about instruments and differentiation that you can apply to your kids. And sometimes you don't have a lot of instruments, and we're gonna talk about that, okay? So, and we're gonna grasp a little bit of the universe of Samba culture, which is huge. Then by taking part on a different kind of music scenario, you may develop your knowledge of the cultural aspects of music making, not only of Brazilian music making, about music making and maybe the music in your neighborhood and your country. And you can apply that pedagogy introduced in the workshop into your teaching practice in any genre and any style. Okay, so body movement. According to Dalcroze, a bridge between experience and understanding, between thought and sound. Okay, Wayne Bauman and Powell, they wrote, things like melodies, rhythms, textures are as much muscular as they are mental. Whatever else music may be, it is invariably a bodily fact. The body represents a common point of reference in all music. Okay, we are, according to Merleau-Ponty, we are body subjects. The body no longer conceived as an object in the world, but as our means of communication with it. Okay? Cultural diversity, the problems of implementing, this is Skippers, the problems of implementing world music into the classroom is the difficulty in finding well-developed lesson materials. So he wrote that in 1996. So it's not as bad, but we could do better with that, okay? We must not be afraid of reducing world music to its barest essentials. Okay, this is when I disagree with Skippers, and he said we shouldn't do that, but depending on the circumstances of resources or students' ability and the environment, I think sometimes it's better to learn a little bit of the clave, a little bit of a pattern, of a rhythm, or just the chorus of a song, and then to learn nothing. Okay, so that children can grow up as culturally unbiased world citizens. Okay, individuals acquire a cultural content through the body in all of its expressions. This is when the two conceptual frameworks, they kind of merge. In other words, man learns culture through its body. Okay, interconnectedness. That's that idea about how you, when you learn a culture, a distant from a different country, you may be able to connect it with your own reality, with your own culture. And then Patricia Campbell, music carries meaning and is useful to people all across the globe in a myriad of ways. Okay. Okay, so Brazil. Why Brazil? Brazil is a multi-musical country in its own right. Because of its size and history of colonization, Brazil is a multi-musical country in its own right, with aspects of European, African, and indigenous peoples' contribution. Most of Brazilian styles and binary meter and may present some kind of syncopation, and are usually in a fast tempo, kind of party-like upbeat. Now, this is really cool by Muniz Sodré. Through syncopation, the slave, not being able to maintain African music, infiltrated his rhythmic conception into white musical forms. It was a tactic of false submission. The black accepted European tonal system, but at the same time destabilized it rhythmically through syncopation, a compromising solution. And then, why oral learning? Why movement? Why not just give him a chart with the music and learn it? Now, Brazil has more or less 11 million illiterate. So the habit of passing on songs orally in some areas of Brazil, in most areas of Brazil, is the only way of perpetuating the oral tradition. It's a necessity, okay? So it's the population of Greece. We have one Greece of people that cannot read and write. I'm not talking about music, I'm talking about Portuguese, our language, okay? So this is a necessity to be able to just sing it, repeat it, learn it, call and response. Okay, so our goals, and the goals you have to keep in mind, sorry, I'm talking a lot, but very soon it's gonna be hands-on. Your goal, to strengthen the rhythm skills of your students. You want them to develop self-expression, and you want them to develop cultural awareness, okay? So we're gonna start now. Now, I'm gonna share a video. If for some reason you can't hear or you miss something, please type or just raise the blue hand of Zoom or just say something, okay? So the Passo method, a teaching and learning method inspired on Dalcroze's music and movement approach. The Passo is a good example of a culturally diverse way of experience rhythm grounded in culture. Through locomotor integrated movement, body movement, we will work as a tool for understanding, because we understand culture through our bodies. Remember that. Now take a look at the square, the yellow square. Whenever the number is without brackets, without the parentheses, so you clap. Okay, I'm gonna stand up for that. So we're gonna do twice each line, okay? I hope you're with me. And there is a video, you're gonna see my feet, but I would appreciate, let me just start here. I would appreciate if you could stand up as well and find yourself in front of you a little square. And you're gonna step on the edges of that square. So it's just the normal size of your step. It doesn't need to be very big or very small. Okay, so usually I start with the right. So 1, that's 1, 2, left. Then I go back with the right, 3, go back with the left, 4. So it's a bar, it's a measure, 4 beats. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. I hope I can't see you, but I would appreciate if you could do that with me now. So with my feet, here we go. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, clap. 1. Clap. Now 2. 2. Now 3. 3. 3. 4. 4. Now 2 and 4. 2. 4. 2. 2. 3. 4. 2. 4. Thank you. Okay. Let me stop sharing because I want to see if people are getting this. Raise a thumb. Simeon, can you hear? How's the balance? Good? Okay. This is for you, Simeon. Look at my new talabarte. Okay. Here we go. I'm going to continue sharing. Thank you. Okay. So, guess what? Were you able to clap? Guess what? You were already playing samba. Okay? So, playing the surdo. Now you can see you got a strap, you got a maceta, we call it a beater, and you have surdo de primeira or surdo de marcação, the one that keeps the beat, the goalkeeper of the music. You have the surdo de segunda, is the surdo de resposta, the one that responds. And the surdo de terceira or surdo de corte, that will kind of improvise and play back and forth with the surdo, but basically he plays a cut. We say corte, cuts. I'm in the middle of a presentation. Thank you. Oh, I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Sorry about that. So this one, the video didn't work out very well, so I'm gonna play my own surdo. I'm gonna try to show you here. So try to play always in the middle, because that's when the sound works better. Now, when you put your hand, you don't have to make sound with that hand. The function of this hand is to kill the sound of the note. So you don't want to sustain and buzzing and getting confusion when you have a lot of drums together. So here we go. You can use the beat that I'm gonna play now for you to walk and get confident with it. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so it's always on the 2 that you have the low sound for the surdo de primeira. And the surdo de segunda plays on 1 and 3. I'm going to play both here. Actually, I could play both here. Let's see if I can do this. So you can see how this one is higher. I'm adapting here. It's not really a terceira. It's not really a segunda. But you can see how this one is kind of a 5th above this one. Okay, this is the goalkeeper. Marcação, resposta. Response. It's answering back. So 1, 2. Now a little bit fast. 1, 2, 3, boom. Okay. Okay. Now you must be thinking, we can't really play samba just playing quarter notes or crotchets in the UK. And so we're gonna need to play the upbeats. So we need to play the 8 notes. So the passo upbeat. Make sure you bend your knees. Okay, so we're gonna still step, but we're gonna bend our knees. And that's gonna be the sensation of the upbeat. So you got to unbalance yourself a little bit in order to walk. So you don't walk like this with your legs stretched anyway. So as natural as possible. Remember, is bodily understanding. So after you are confident, stop counting. It's not about counting, because you could be counting just sitting on a chair. Okay, so it's not the idea to count. So you're gonna do 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. And it's not like reggae. I wanna love you. No, you don't go up. You kind of push the floor down. Okay. Whew. Now let me share I have a video with that. You're gonna see my legs. Very exciting. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. And I forget to say, you're gonna clap 1 and 2 times, 2 and 2 times, 3 and 2 times, 4 and 2 times. And then you're gonna play all the notes. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, okay? And then just ends 1 and 2 and 3. So I'm trying to show you in like, in a drop, how I would do this with kids in the classroom. Hi. Somebody has a question? Okay.
And 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 2 and 3 and 4 2 and 3 and 1 and 3 and 4 and 3 2 and 4 and
all 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 again. And stop, then just walk. 3 and 4 and clap and everything. Just numbers. Again. Everything and just and. That's it. Okay. So back. So this is what we were playing. Hey, congratulations, Jennifer. I saw you. I saw some people. Jennifer, Marco. Marco, you're still sitting down. You're not doing the pass. Simeon too. I know this is too easy for you. But it's good to see people moving. It's a bit unusual to be online doing something with the body, but okay. So I'm going to talk about, this is a last minute thing. I was a little bit influenced by the rubrics that just were presented in the previous workshop. I have some rubrics that I had to do for my course here, and it's really useful. It's not because it's oral and you have to be running away and avoid paper and planning and all the rest. So we're going to get there. So now this is when the nitty-gritty starts. Okay, this is the folha do I. What is the I? So now we're going to talk about the quarter note, the eighth note. So you can't play Brazilian music without 16 notes, the semi-quavers. Okay, so this is how it looks visually, but you can do a lot with your kids without even showing a piece of paper. Okay, so what I do is I just go straight into the tambourine clave. But in Brazil, we don't call it a clave. Brazilians don't like to, it's not like Cuban music, but it is a clave. So it's something that we do with the tambourine. Now you can look here, the rubrics, you have the the pattern, the rhythm pattern of the tamborim that we call teleco-teco. So it looks really complicated, but your children will not see that. So remember, we don't want to put the car in front of the horses, okay? So now I'm going to introduce it to you with the passo and how I do with the kids. First of all, I flip the pattern. I start on beat 3. For some purists, that will be a little bit of a not very recommendable, but they do that in São Paulo all the time. So let's start on beat 3. And you can see that we have two bars of 2 here. So this thing about 4 is something that we use in order to teach, but it's actually a binary rhythm. Okay? Sorry, I'm talking a lot. Let's get into it. So we're gonna walk. 1, 2, 3. Just walk. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm gonna start clapping gradually. Remember, I'm gonna start on beat 3, but it's gonna be our beat 1. Are you ready? Okay. 1, 2, 3, go. So just repeat, just do the same with me. Okay, and your kids got it. Okay, let's move on. Okay, it's gonna get harder. Okay. Okay, got it. So that's how I would introduce for middle school, even 5th grade, 4th grade, depend. Even 3rd grade can do. Maybe you just give half of it. Oh. Then they can breathe. They feel like they're syncopated, they're playing. And then you can even introduce the agogo for a different group, just half of the pattern as well, okay? It's that idea about the Barry's essentials that it's not totally authentic, but it's fun and the kids will be learning and they will be moving and they will never forget. So you can do. Okay, so you could have some call and response and do like that. Okay, so I'm gonna move on. Okay, instruments. Let me talk a little bit about instruments. The instruments, it's the heart of the music because it's part of the community. They create their instrument, they build their instrument. Okay, the tambourine was an invention of a guy in the Morro do Estácio in the 20s or 30s. He wanted something that could cut through everything else. So it's the highest instrument so I'm introducing you the lowest, the surdo, and the highest, the tambourine. Okay, so you have, and then there's a lot of syncopated stuff that goes in the middle. So the tradition of the music, it's really important for them to learn. And as I said before, it's an excellent opportunity of differentiation. Okay, maybe this is too hard for Johnny or Matthew or Lisa, but then give him a shaker. Remember, always walking. Okay, I have a shaker that has a strap here. I put it on my feet and I play it while I play the guitar. It's very useful. Sometimes you gotta do that. So you have shakers. You can improvise. You can have blocks or coconut. Okay, so, and this leads us to the next thing. There's a lot of opportunities for handmade instruments. You can use recycled material. You can create a different kind of awareness. I have a big one that I love. So all the high stuff is on the top, below at the bottom. It's really cool. So opportunities for interdisciplinary teaching and learning as well. So you can show them the history of it, the slave trade. And it's amazing what you can do with, it's months. So we're doing in 40 minutes here what you should be doing in a semester. Okay, rote learning. Why is it important? I already said it's a valid way, but it's also a necessity. Okay, so you can teach. So let's try. Let's do something. Okay, I'll sing a part and then you repeat. Okay, you can stay on mute because if we turn everything on, it's going to be crazy. So. Oh, remember to walk. 3, 4. Oh, your turn. Again, no, another part. Thank you. Oba, oba, oba.
Oba, oba, oba.
Oba.
All together. 3, 4. Oh,
Wow,
wow.
fantastic. Beautiful canon that we did now. Okay, so it's the simple pentatonic melody. We're not really singing a lot in Portuguese, but we could go on and do mais que nada.
Mais que nada.
Sai da minha frente que eu quero passar. Okay, so we could do, so you can do that, and you can see how the kids, they love it. They don't know what they're singing about, but if you can tell them a little bit, is also a way of creating awareness and developing the tradition. So you could just give them this, right? You can just give them a chart. 4 simple chords. So now another issue that is important is about the accompaniment. So why the guitar? The guitar is useful because you can walk around the room with the guitar. You can't do that with the piano. Okay, and then you can check. With my right hand, I play the surdo de primeira here. Primeira e segunda. And with my 3 fingers, I play the tambourine clave. Putting them together. Okay? So moving on. Time is marching on. The same thing with the percussion. Oh, you have some 8th graders. They're fantastic. Just give them a chart. Just make your life easier and theirs as well. They will not be playing the music. They got to feel it. Their body needs to feel it. So we have the tambourine, the agogô, the shakers. We call it chocalho. Surdo de terceira is the one that cuts. Surdo de segunda is the one that responds. And surdo de primeira is the goalkeeper, as I said, the surdo de marcação, the one that keeps everybody together, the lowest sound in our ensemble. Okay, now I think I got to the end. Now reflection. Now 2 little things. Alice, Australian, she was one of the first ones to study the Aboriginal in music education contest. So music provides a vital element in education within any multicultural society. It can bridge various thought processes. It is concerned with the education of the whole person. It can stimulate intercultural understanding at a deeply personal level, with the result that a person is no longer a member solely of one culture. Okay? In the near future, cross-cultural studies will spread around the world, and we shall be able to stop using this rather meaningless term, world music, and refer to all music simply as music. Okay, this is skippers. Now, walking forward, because when we play the same music, we feel the same way. We create empathy with each other. My music, your music, our music can bind us together as families, as tribes, as societies, in a way that nothing else can. Okay, so a question for you. What part can world music play in introducing children to the rich diversity of music that surround us? Hi, Lily. Should we open for discussion, or do you want to play more? We can play more as well.
Yes, thank you. This is such a wonderful session. How I wish I've seen many of us have put in the chat how I wish we are here with you playing music and singing with you in person. So, but this year we have to do this on the computer, but hopefully next time we can do it together in person. But thank you very much for this wonderful presentation and sharing this beautiful music with us. So now let's see if people have some questions for discussion from the chat. And oh, everybody are just praising you. This is excellent. It's great. Everybody had such a great time.
My pleasure.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, I start with a question because you mentioned about interdisciplinary studies and integrating like history. And you at one stage you were mentioning African slave trade and you're talking about syncopation and relating to how it develops. Is it something Western or Brazilian? Can you talk a little bit more about this, because this sounds very interesting?
Oh, I can talk the whole weekend. Okay. Well, there is a lot, but if you look at, there's an author called Ney Lopes. He's also I can write in the chat. Ney Lopes, he's a composer, he's still alive, and he has a book that is ABC of Samba or Beabá do Samba, something like that. I don't know if there is a translation, but he tells about how that when the slavery was over, a lot of the slaves, the former slaves from the countryside, had to move on to the cities and close to the factories that were emerging in early 20th century Rio de Janeiro and São Paulo. And usually they would set themselves in a hill that became our favelas. And they had very different, although Samba is one big universe, there are different particularities of each community. This is really interesting. They have different colors, they have their flag. It's a big community involvement. They start preparing Carnival months before. Actually, when the Carnival ends, they start preparing for next year. And you have Morro do Salgueiro, it's the red and white Samba flag. They are in Tijuca. And Tijuca used to be a very industrial place of Rio. We don't have many industries in Rio anymore. But for example, Mangueira is also close to Salgueiro, but it's a totally different. The population that was part of that community was related to the police and to the military. And there is a difference. They, for example, they don't use the surdo de resposta. They don't use the response surdo. They only have surdo de primeira. So when Mangueira comes in the avenue, they boom, 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 boom. You don't have bing, boom, bing, boom. You don't have this, just boom. And it's Mangueira. Just to remember, I'm already with the goosebumps. So that developed a lot. And you have all kinds of different sambas. You have the samba more rural, the pagode, the one that is improvised, that they are more like the rappers, that one kind of dueling with the other and trying to be funny with the other. And you have, so partido alto, you have samba de mesa where people sit down together and play most old style sambas. So yeah, I can talk for age, but this idea of the syncopation as a resistance was, I only saw Sodré, Muniz Sodré talking about that. And it's a really interesting thing.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody
Thank
else?
you. Any other questions? Let's see. We have like 2 minutes left.
Pepe, can I ask a question about the syncopation?
Yeah.
Do you think that this was developed as a conscious thing, or do you think it's more an accident of, I suppose, people that come from a culture that mainly plays 6/8 music and then been asked to play in 4/4, which is the more European form, and that, you know, it's kind of a, not bad playing, but it's playing one time signature, but always with the other in the back of your mind?
Yeah, excellent question. Yeah, I think they somehow adapted, and there is one interesting thing about the difference between Brazil, United States, and Cuba, for example, and even Bahia. Bahia is a special case. It's the northeast of Brazil. So while here, somehow the 6/8 feeling and the not really measured and accurate, or it's a different concept of being in time, and they kind of adapt and make it, forced it into it. I don't think it was a rational thing. I think it happened that way. And while in the US, you had the Africans learning the instruments of the white man, and with the civil war, where you had a lot of horn instruments available, and so you don't have many percussionists. So name Afro-American, North American that plays percussion. And in Brazil, we have a lot, because also for economic reasons, these instruments are expensive as well. So you have one Moacir Santos, a trombone player, but he went to America, and so you have Pixinguinha, flutist, and saxophone player, but it's a different way. Also, a capoeira friend of mine, he told me that the colonizer in the US, he didn't let the slaves play his music. While in Brazil, the Portuguese let them play. Every Sunday was time for religion, food. You have to think that is an environment, it's a cultural thing. It's the food, it's the beans, it's the cachaça, it's the movement, the big circle where people touch each other's belly. So it's a big party. It's what developed into gospel and rhythm and blues in North America developed into samba. And if you think about Cuba, and even because also there are slaves from different areas of Africa where the 6/8 is more predominant, I think they managed to keep it stronger in Bahia and Cuba. I don't know Cuban music. I find it really hard because it's so much more triplet and 6/8 feeling, and things are divided in 3 than in 16 notes like in Brazil. So whenever I'm playing Cuban music, I end up playing Brazilian music. I had a teacher when I went to GIT in LA, Efraim Toro. We used to sit in his percussion class playing guitar, bass, and you are not playing the music, you are playing Brazilian music. You're not playing the music. He would say like, oh, this rhythm is Mozambique, this rhythm is salsa, and I was always playing, I ended up playing samba. So yeah, but thank you. I think it was not an intentional thing, no. I think we have time for one more maybe. Or no? Anybody?
Actually, this is time now, but
Okay.
Pepe, we really appreciate the wonderful workshop, and that you have sent some worksheet, a handout, and then have been posted already in the Scratch website. So if you haven't got the chance to see it, the audience, you can go and check out. And also, I've watched your wonderful videos, how the children in England were enjoying this music and how you apply this in the classroom. And so if any of you didn't have a chance to see that, please go to the website, the conference website, and check it out, the materials and the papers, and the conversation can continue. But thank you very much. Thank you very much, Pepe.
Thank you very
and
much.
Thank you, everybody. Now
let me just say one thing. Like if you want any kind of resources, just get in touch. My email is there. My school email here. I'm in Atlanta now, doing this PhD in music education, and so get in touch and let's exchange, because I'm really into it, and I love to exchange. And please use everything. And then Give me some feedback. Look, I did this. It was a mess, or I did it. It was fantastic. They learned it. They got it. Okay. And thank you, Chris, and somebody else that was singing. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Great.
I was singing too. All right.
Bye.
Thank you. All right. So now, let me just